what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be movie content. 2023 is over, so that means for today's video, we are going to go over the top 10 movies I watched in the year 2023. I can't remember the exact number, but I watched 138 or 139 movies, so I actually had a lot to choose from. I had a lot of 4.5, 5 out of 5 star movies, and actually all 10 movies on this list were rated 5 out of 5 stars, which is a first. There are 3 things I want to let y'all know before we jump into the video. Number 1, I am going to be talking about these movies from number 10 down to my ultimate best movie of the year. The second thing is all of these are new to me movies. I never include rewatches in these lists. And the third thing is that not all these movies came out in 2023. I was trying to catch up on some backlog. I have a lot to say, so without further ado, let's get started. So at number 10, we have 1930's All Quiet on the Western Front. This movie is about a group of German boys who join World War I for a sense of adventure, and they quickly learn that war is not what it was made out to be. So I went into this movie having already read the book. Let me tell you, the book is one of the saddest books I've ever read, so I went into this movie knowing it was going to be sad, and boy did it deliver. The book is known as one of the most famous anti-war books of all time, if not the most famous, and I was wondering how this film was going to handle that, because I know sometimes films change things, especially in anti-war message. But I was shocked to find out that this movie was actually pretty respectful towards the book. It's a pretty faithful adaptation from what I remember of the book. I felt a lot of emotions watching this movie. I was sad, I was angry for these characters. I felt the sense of despair and hopelessness watching some of those battle scenes. I feel like this movie truly captured the essence of what I believe war to be. There's a lot of movies nowadays that try to make it out to be this grand adventure, like, yes, sad things happen because it's war, but remember, you're a hero at the end of it. Whereas this movie and, you know, the book are basically like, no, war just sucks. We shouldn't have it at all. You're not a hero, you're not a villain. War is just terrible, especially for these 18-year-old boys who had nothing to do with these issues, and yet all the old men in power are sending them out to fight anyway. And one thing I really liked about this movie was actually the lack of music. I feel like it's what made some of these scenes even sadder. And my favorite part of the movie is actually the last scene and how it's shot and how it pays tribute to all of our characters. So this is an absolutely great movie, probably one of the greatest war movies I've ever seen. I watched it because I know the remake was nominated for Best Picture in 2023, which I have not seen. And I'm actually shocked it made my top 10 only because, like, admittedly some recency bias comes in when I make these lists, and I watched this so early in 2023, but that's how you know it holds up. The fact that I watched it back in like February and I'm talking about it in January of 2024. At number 9, we have 2023's Elemental. This takes place in the universe where all the characters are one of the 4 elements. You have the air people who are basically clouds, you have the earth people, you got the fire people, you got the water people, and then there's a singular town where all of these people can come together. And in this movie, a fire woman named Ember meets a water man named Wade, and they start a special bond. And you know what? This movie received a lot of flack, and I feel like a lot of modern Disney movies are receiving flack. Some of it's deserved, like Wish. That was very deserved. I don't think it was deserved for Elemental at all. I kind of want to blame the advertising for it, because I think the advertising for this movie did it very dirty. Because the ads made it out to be just another Zootopia, which we've seen before, but really this was just a very cute romance story. I absolutely adored the couple in this movie. I found Ember to be very relatable, a little too relatable, especially when it came to, you know, customer service. Ooh, girl. And I loved how joyous and happy-go-lucky and free Wade was. They were cute together in the sense of the opposites attract, not just because, you know, they're water and fire, but because you have this very feisty woman who gets frustrated very easily compared to this guy who tries not to let the anger get the best of him, and they just work together so well. Like, he calms her, like the typical love story. He calms her down, whereas like she helps him feel angry when he needs to, because there are times where he lets things slide. And I just thought, like, their chemistry was so good. And let me tell you, do not watch this movie if you're a single hopeless romantic like I am, because I was sobbing in the theater surrounded by other couples. So that was kind of embarrassing, but like, boy did those two love each other. And I really love the world building in this. It's kind of sparse, but you know, Pixar did what they could given the time limits. A lot of people were comparing this understandably to Avatar: The Last Airbender, but no, it is its own thing. But I did like how like certain elements were based on certain cultures. I thought they captured that very well. And this had beautiful, impressive animation, especially Ember, like just the fire people in general. That was so cool to look at. And it just amazes me that Pixar is at where they're at today when it comes to their animation style. And you know what? One of the reasons it made this list is because I'm a true believer that sometimes a simple story is what works well. I know like a lot of people going into this, a big criticism about this movie is that it's not some grandiose story that they're used to Pixar doing. But you know, sometimes I don't think a story needs to be grandiose to be great. Sometimes simple is best, and this movie captured that extremely well. So that is why it is number 9 on this list. At number 8, we actually have a Christmas movie. It's 1993's or 2's, one of those years. The Muppets Christmas Carol. So this is basically a Christmas Carol, but Scrooge is played by a human, Michael Caine, while everyone else is played by Muppets. I was avoiding this movie for the longest time because I'm actually not a huge fan of the Christmas Carol story. One of the reasons is because my mom loves it. So growing up, I had to watch basically every adaptation ever, and there's an endless amount of adaptations of this story. I did try reading the book, the original book by Charles Dickens, and I really wasn't a fan. I read 2 of his books and hated them both. Like, me and Dickens, we're beefing, what can I say? However, I am of the opinion the Muppets do make everything better, and a lot of people told me this is actually their favorite adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and I read somewhere that the Dickens Society considers this one of the best. So you know what? I put on my headphones, I put the camera on because I did react to this movie, and I was like, let's watch it. And let me tell you, I absolutely adored this. I love that it was a musical, and I think that's really what helped me enjoy the story because I love a good musical. And all the songs were great, they were all bops. One of the Tiny Tims made me cry, actually. Gonzo's narration was great, and I love that he wasn't Gonzo in the movie, he was Charles Dickens. That's another thing I found so funny. It was like when you read the credits, you know, it's not Frank Oz as Emily Cratchit, it's Miss Piggy as Emily Cratchit, it's Kermit the Frog as Bob Cratchit, etc., etc. The concept is basically actors are playing actors in a play. All the jokes in this movie were great. I literally laughed out loud at most of them, and Rizzo the Rat kind of makes this movie, just his side comments and plus his New Jersey accent, you know, in the midst of all this Britishness, I thought was kind of funny. I really like Michael Caine in this film as well. He plays the role straight as if he's doing like a Shakespearean play, and I think that actually helped make the movie as great as it is. Because I've seen some other Muppet movies where like you can kind of tell the actors are having a hard time. So oftentimes humans in a lot of Muppet stuff kind of come off weird and fake and over-exaggerated, but Michael Caine did a great job speaking to them as if they're any other human. And you can also tell he was having a blast filming this. I love watching a movie where you could tell the actors were having a great time. Not only did I cry during Tiny Tim's song, but I also cried when he died, which is a first. Usually I feel anything, because I've seen so many fucking adaptations, usually I don't feel anything anymore, but this one I did. I don't know what it is about Tiny Tim being a frog that's this big that gets me, but it does. And in the end, I just found this really wholesome, and I love a good, feel-good, wholesome film. And I even watched this movie twice. I watched it in the beginning of December, and then I watched it like Christmas Eve because I was showing my parents. So that's why it's one of the best movies I watched in 2023, and it's probably going to be another movie that I'm going to be watching every Christmas. At number 7, we have 2023's Suzume. This is about a girl who meets a mysterious man, and she opens a door which causes a lot of destruction, and they have to work together to stop what's essentially the end of the world. And the guy turns into a chair. This is one of those movies where I'm not particularly sure why I gave it 5 out of 5. Like, it just is, and I couldn't get myself to give it anything lower. But I will say one of the reasons I love this movie so much is it ended up being not what I was expecting. And I mean that in a great way. Because if you watch the trailer, it comes across as like a really weird romance. And I remember being put off by it because Suzume is only like 16, 17. And the mysterious man, whose name I can't remember, is like 27. So I wasn't here for that age gap. And I just thought it was weird that he turned into a chair. Because I remember this trailer dropping and everyone was like, what the fuck did I just watch? But I had to watch this movie anyway because it's by the same guy who made Your Name and Wuthering With You, and I love those movies. And then I watched the movie and you find out it's not a romance, and I'm all for that. It was just about 2 people who work together to prevent the end of the world. And sometimes that's all I want. I don't want people to become couples. I just want them to work together and to remain friends and just to have any other relationship that's not romantic. Also, the guy who turns into a chair, he is just as confused as the audience. So I'm glad that happened because I was like, why is she in love with a chair? But you know, now that I've seen the movie, a lot makes sense. I do love a character who's just as confused as the rest of us. I always think that's hilarious. Oh, this movie has one of the most intense openings I've ever seen. Like, just when it comes to the action and the very loud music and the animation and the colors just going everywhere. And then the title card appears, and then the title card is just black screen with Suzume written in white, and it has like the calmest, most soothing music you will ever hear. It was so jarring at first, but like I remember like I was exhaling a breath because I felt like I could finally relax. And as with this guy's other movies, the animation in this was top notch, absolutely stellar. Everything could be a background on your computer, a wallpaper, that's the word I'm looking for. He never disappoints when it comes to animation. And that's all I have to say about this movie. Again, not really sure why it's making the top 10. I just can't get it to not to. Like I just liked it. So if you are looking for an anime movie, I do recommend this one. At number 6, we have another movie that I reacted to, and that is 1944's Gaslight. This is about a recently married woman who thinks the gas lights and other appliances in her house are changing, but her husband tells her it's all in her head, and throughout the movie you see the de-evolution of her mental state. I was not expecting to enjoy this movie as much as I did. This was something else, y'all. So this is actually where the term gaslighting comes from. And knowing the term gaslight, like, you're definitely gonna get something different than the audience did back in 1944. Because knowing the term gaslight kind of ruins the twist of the movie. But I think this movie ages well in the sense that, like, yeah, the twist was ruined for me, but because I knew what gaslight meant, I could watch this differently with a modern lens, and the modern lens didn't ruin the watching experience. You know, if anything, I caught on to the hints of foreshadowing right away, or just the hints that it was the husband all along, and seeing more of his manipulation tactics. Either way, I would have felt sorry for Paula, but like it helped me like grow angrier at him and feel sorrier for her as the movie went along. If you watch my reaction, you could see me getting like visibly upset and like wanting to fight this man. What really helped this movie was the amazing acting. He makes Paula out to be so helpless. You want to give Paula a big hug. It's uncomfortable to watch her mental stability decline as the plot goes on. Then you have Charles Boyer, who does such a great job of playing a fucking asshole. You want to fight him. Like, I wasn't even halfway through the movie and I was ready to jump through the screen and fight this guy. And to this day, when I see photos of him, I'm like, I know who you are. You're just an actor, but I'm still gonna be mad at you anyway. It was the looks on his face that made the character. Like, yes, some of the words he said to Paula made me viscerally cringe, but it was the looks on his face too. He had this particular all-knowing look throughout the movie that would send shivers up my spine. And it was the way he would look at Paula and just like look down at her, and you could see that he's thinking that she's, you know, pathetic, and it made me so angry, which is another reason this movie made my top 10. This movie made me so angry throughout, and never has a movie made me that angry. Again, if I watched this in 1944, not knowing the term gaslight, I don't know if angry would be the feeling I would get. Maybe by the end, but like throughout the movie, no way. But that's I guess that goes back to saying, like, watching this with a modern lens. When you watch this with a modern lens, knowing what the term gaslighting means, you will never be angry at someone the way you are going to be angry at Charles Boyer. This is quite literally the best depiction of mental abuse I've ever seen in film. I don't even think like modern films can compare to this. Because of all that, it freaked me out a little, hence why it's number 6 on this list. At number 5, we have 2022's Babylon. This movie is about a group of filmmakers, whether they're actors, directors, producers, the people that make title cards, and it follows their lives from the silent film era up until the talkies. This is one of those movies that you either love it or you hate it, and I absolutely loved it. This is one of the most outrageous films I've ever seen, and I loved every minute of it. The beginning of this movie pulled me right in. There's an insane amount of debauchery happening. And at first I was grossed out, but then at the same time I couldn't look away and I couldn't stop watching, and I was so excited to see what other shenanigans, what's her face, Nellie LaRoe was gonna get herself into. Like, the moment I saw a guy explore his piss kink, and within the first 5 minutes I knew I was in for a ride for this movie. And like, call that disgusting, maybe it's one of the reasons you hate this movie, but like, if you could catch my attention, that's one way to catch my attention. So, and if you caught my attention and I sat through a 3-hour movie, you deserve to be on this list. But I thought the tones of this movie were handled very well. In the first like hour and a half, this movie is incredibly fast-paced, has a lot of, again, debauchery. It's crazy, it's chaotic, you have people overacting, but it fits because that part of the movie takes place in the 1920s. And the 1920s were kind of like a wild time, all things considered. But then in the last half of the movie, when we're starting to explore the talkies, the tone of the movie calms down significantly, and it also becomes more conservative. So while the first 10 minutes of the movie has an orgy, you're not going to see that later throughout the movie, and people are more covered up. There's a lack of, I don't know if there's like no sex scenes, but there's definitely a lack of sex scenes. The pace is much slower. People are more refined in a sense, but that's because that's how the 1930s were. So they did a great job matching the tones with the time periods certain scenes took place in. And I really appreciated how this film showed how everyone in the film industry was affected, because usually when you watch these type of movies, it's only the actors. And it's common knowledge that a lot of silent film era actors struggled when they moved on to talkies. And this movie showed that. But then not only that, but they showed how directors were affected and how like people who were willing to change did a lot better with the talkies. They showed how some people lost their jobs. For example, if you worked on the title cards for silent films, you lost your job when it came to the talkies if you couldn't evolve into something else. And it really showed that different eras require different personalities. And I thought because of how this film handled everything, it was a great criticism of Hollywood, while also being a love letter to cinema in its own way. It criticized Hollywood with how Hollywood handled the talkies people and how they kind of just kicked them to the curb and didn't really help them. But then it was a love letter by showing respect to those people who got screwed over. And I'm still pissed this movie did not win production design and also best score at the Oscars, but we can't always get what we want. But I had so much fun, y'all. And this movie's over 3 hours, and it didn't feel like that at all. This movie felt like an hour and a half. The pacing in this was magnificent. I had a great time. I actually highly recommend this. Again, you either love it or you hate it. I'm on the love train. I recommend it. Number 4 in this list, we have 2023's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is a sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, which was about Miles Morales, who gets bitten by a radioactive spider and becomes the Spider-Man of that universe. He has to save the world while also getting other Spider-Mans of other universes back to their original homelands, original universe. I keep using that word. This made my top 5 simply because it's one of the greatest sequels I've ever seen. It's always so scary going to a sequel because you hope it's going to hold up to the first one. Oftentimes that doesn't happen, but this one did. I'd even argue it's better than the first one. I was absolutely blown away and thought, because we had to wait 5 years for this, and I thought that because of how amazing this movie was, I thought the wait was worth it. This is definitely one of the best films I've ever seen narratively. I was engrossed throughout the entire movie. It's about 2.5 hours long. It didn't feel like 2.5 hours, and I mean that in a good way. I love the concept of the canon events, and I thought it was hilarious the whole plot of this movie started over a bagel. Like something so small, something you could easily miss in the first movie, and yet they make a huge deal about it in this one. I thought that was very clever. I had a theory about the story of this movie, but there was like a subtle thing that proved my theory wrong, and I thought that was cool. And when I say subtle, I mean tiny. It wasn't even like explicitly mentioned. And then I also appreciate that the end wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. I thought the ending was gonna be pretty predictable once they said something, and I was like, yeah, that I could see the movie ending like that. But then it didn't, and my jaw was on the floor. And you know what? I'm gonna say it. Maybe it's recency bias, I don't know, but this is the best movie I've ever seen visually. Of course, I love the comic book art style, the mix of 2D and 3D, but that's not it. Like, one of my favorite parts of the film was seeing Gwen's universe and how it looked like a painting, and then the colors changed with her mood. If you love discussing and exploring color theory, this is the movie for you, especially the scenes of Gwen's universe. And I still can't get over the different types of animation they can include in one movie. Like, I'm still blown away about Spider-Punk and how hard that had to be. And then the incorporation of live action in this as well. And the character designs. There's so many character designs in this. There are so many different Spider-Mans in this. You could probably spend hours pointing out the different designs. And like, obviously there's some I like more than others, but they got hella creative with this. And also, of course, this movie had a banger soundtrack. I always have to talk about that, especially the last song in the end credits. That made my number 2 on Spotify 2023. I loved basically everything about this movie, and I cannot wait for the last one. Moving on to my top 3, at number 3 we have 2023's Killers of the Flower Moon. This is based on a true story, and it explores the massacre of the Osage tribe. One of the reasons this made one of my top movies of the year is because of the point of view the movie's in. If you've been on this channel for a while, you know I'm a sucker for when the protagonist is actually a bad guy. You would expect this movie to be in Molly's point of view, but this is actually in Ernest's point of view. Ernest is the white man that she married, and he was one of the many people behind these massacres. If you don't know about the Osage massacres, it took place in, I believe, the 1920s, and it was when Ernest, his brother, and like one of the head guys in this town, they were working together to kill off people in the Osage tribe in order to gain their inheritance. But I feel like by having this movie in Ernest's point of view, it helped me see how truly evil these people are. I'm a huge fan of show, don't tell, but I do think there's certain moments where you do have to tell rather than show. And Martin Scorsese captures that amazingly in this movie, because there are just certain things that Ernest would say, along with Robert De Niro's character, that would send chills up my spine, and it disturbed me more than it would have if they just had shown the scene itself. The acting in this film is phenomenal. Sometimes when I watch movies based on a true story, I still feel like I'm watching characters, even though they're real people. But the way it's done in this movie, like for example, Lily Gladstone, she plays Molly on such a personal level. Like, it truly felt like I was watching a documentary of sorts and not a biodoc. You truly get to know Molly and her struggle and what happened to her family, and when she's sad, you're sad. Like, it sends a chill up your spine. Robert De Niro did a great job of playing an evil asshole, because of course he did as Robert De Niro. Leonardo DiCaprio was surprising. I mean, he's an amazing actor, so I'm not like shocked he did amazing. It's just the type of person he plays in this movie. Ernest is a very pathetic man, and I've never seen Leonardo DiCaprio play someone so pathetic before. I actually wanted to slap the shit out of Ernest and tell him to grow a fucking backbone. It was weird seeing Leonardo DiCaprio portray this, because I'm used to him portraying like these tough guys or tough rich guys who know how to stick up for themselves. And yet here he is in this movie being manipulated, but also just being so pathetically terrible. It was weird. And the screams him and Lily let out throughout this movie, oh my god, still haunting. I hope this movie's at least nominated for Best Score, because this score did a great job keeping this movie very tense. And yeah, the movie's 3.5 hours long, and usually a movie that long, I'm like, God, please just like make it shorter. Like, why does it have to be that long? But this is one of the rare instances where I don't think this movie can actually be any shorter. Every scene in this movie is important and needs to be talked about. It gives context to what happened and to why Ernest was the way he was, but also in a way by explaining everything, it truly respects what happened to the Osage, and it forces the audience to learn and actually listen to their voices. It does feel like a 3.5 hour long movie, however, I was engrossed throughout the entire film, so I'm okay with that. And I really like how this movie ended too. It ended on like a commentary about how audiences view true crime nowadays and how we view it more so as entertainment rather than the tragedies they actually are. This truly is an amazing film, and I do highly recommend seeing it. I hope it's at least nominated for Best Picture. I actually want this to win Best Picture over Oppenheimer. A lot of people are gunning for that one, but I actually hope this one wins, because I think it would open a lot of doors. Native American stories deserve to be heard, and I feel like by having this win Best Picture, Hollywood would see that and would see that people actually want to hear their stories, and hopefully allocate the Martin Scorsese budget to these Native American creators. Number 2, we have 2022's Aftersun. This movie is about a woman who's reminiscing on the last time she ever saw her father. I'm gonna be straight up, this movie is number 2 simply because of how emotionally distraught I was by the end of it. As someone who's very close to their father, this hit close to home. Like, a lot of movies exploring the relationship between father and daughter do, but there's just something about this one. Like, it tore at my heartstrings because you don't know why the dad disappeared, but there are a lot of subtle hints throughout the film. There's enough where you can infer what happened. And it's just such an interesting film. Like, my viewing experience was interesting just because, like, while watching it, I didn't really have any physical reactions. I chuckled here and there, but that's basically it. Otherwise I just stared at the screen with a blank face. But there was something about the end, like the last shot of the movie, the under pressure scene, and then the very last shot of the movie with the end credit music that just hit me like a train when the message of the film finally settled in. I just ugly sobbed for like a solid 30 minutes, and I had to get up and go to the other room and tell my father I love him. The message of this movie just hits so hard because, like, on the surface, yeah, it's about a girl on vacation with her father, but deep down it's about a father who wants to buy the world for his daughter but unfortunately can't afford it. But the daughter doesn't want the world, she just wants to be with her dad. And like, I'm tearing up just saying that, and I can hear the music in my head. So I'm gonna leave it at that. If you have any sort of relationship with your father, or just any dynamic with your father, just watch this. And at number 1, we have an extremely feel-good movie, because I do love a happy movie every now and then, and one that I can rewatch and feel validated by, and that is 2023's Barbie. I don't think I really have to give an introduction about this. This is about the toy Barbie. Feminism, we love to see it, we love women power. And let me tell you, I loved every second of this movie. Even the parts that I thought they could have done better with, still loved. I don't really have like a lot of criticism of this film just because it made me feel so good inside. When I say I loved everything, I mean I loved everything. First of all, the sets. They build real life-size Barbie dream houses. That is my own dream. You know how many times I wanted to step foot in my Barbie dream houses as a kid? And also the fact that it was like real sets means this movie's gonna age well, because you see some of these movies that are all CGI and like the longer time goes on, the worse they look and the more they hurt my eyes. I know this movie's gonna stand the test of time. The costumes, were they gimmicky and cheap looking? Yes, but that's what the Barbie clothes look like. It captured the essence of the toy, and that's what I wanted. Something that, like, in the past, things that bothered me when it comes to, like, live action movies, they're always afraid to get, like, gimmicky and corny with their costumes. Even though, when they do that, that's when it works the best. So shout out to the costume designer of this movie. I actually hope she gets nominated for an Oscar because she went all out. She dove right into the Barbie universe and captured it so great. And I also love that a lot of the outfits in this movie were outfits that Barbies actually wore. The humor of this movie is some of my favorite humor of all time. I do love a corny but self-aware movie. The point of this movie was not subtle in the slightest, which is why, like, watching some people online, like, miss it, watch it go right over their heads is kind of funny, because I'm like, ooh, this movie could not, media literacy must be in peril, because this movie could not be any more obvious about what it was trying to say. And like I said, the reason this movie is #1 on the list is because it was just extremely, not only because it was a really fun movie, but it was just extremely validating. Was America Ferrera's speech corny? Yeah. Was it basically feminism 101? Yeah. Do I care? No, because sometimes it's nice to be reminded. And also, for sake of argument, the audience knows about feminism, but the characters don't. Like, Barbie doesn't. That was one of the points of the movie. So, like, yeah, the speech was, you know, I've heard it all before, but Barbie had it, and it was nice seeing these characters learn how to love themselves. I did not expect to cry during this movie. Like, with all the marketing and just knowing Barbie and, like, hearing some of the songs and going into this movie, I was 100% expecting this just to be corny fun. And, like, I was expecting, because I had a Barbenheimer weekend, I was expecting Oppenheimer to be the movie to give me an existential crisis. Back in, like, January, February, whenever this trailer dropped, if you were to tell me it was going to be Barbie that would cause an existential crisis that weekend, I would not have believed you. But, like, let me tell you, going into this movie, I thought the song What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish was going to play during a very, like, jokey scene, because if you listen to the lyrics of the song, it is, like, literal. And instead, I'm leaving the movie asking myself, what was I made for? Why am I here? Am I as perfect as the creator of Barbie wants me to be? If I had watched this movie during my mental breakdown earlier in the year, I would have been a hot fucking mess. I was already crying in the theater, when I was mentally stable. Who knew what would have happened watching this, like off my rocker? I don't know. There was just something about this movie that made me feel like everything is going to be okay, which is definitely a message I needed to hear at the time this movie came out. So I think that's another reason it made #1. It was just a movie I watched at the right time. You know what? Admittedly, another reason this movie made the top of the year was because of the marketing and, like, just the lead up to that movie. To this day, it still amazes me that the Barbie Oppenheimer meme was a meme started by the people. Like, people just thought it was hilarious these two completely different movies were coming out the same day. And then marketing and people on social media just ran with that. So now both Barbie and Oppenheimer were breaking box office records. People were just having fun. It was nice to see people have fun on social media rather than arguing about everything all the time. People were dressing up. They were making their own costumes. They were saying, "Hi, Barbie," to, like, random strangers on the street. And it was nice seeing everyone happy and coming together, even if it only did last, like, a week or two. This movie made me feel a lot of emotions. Like, it's a feel-good movie with probably great rewatchability. And I had a blast. It's a fun, not only did I cry, but it's just a fun movie, and sometimes that's just what I want. Like, as great as some of these other films were, such as Killers of the Flower Moon and Gaslight, like, they were great story-wise and on a technical level as well. Sometimes I just want a fun movie that doesn't make me think too hard, and that's what Barbie gave me, hence why it's the best movie I watched in 2023. And that is it for this video. Let me know your thoughts down below if you guys have seen any of these movies or are now willing to see these movies now that I've talked about them. Let me know what your best film of 2023 was. If you liked this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. Without further ado, I'm gonna peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao, tutti.